I smoothed my simple black dress, not the designer suit my sister Catherine wore to court, and cleared my desk at Anderson and Associates for the last time. Public defense? Dad's voice dripped with disdain from the doorway. After 3 generations of corporate law? You're running away from real law, Emma. Behind him, Catherine smirked in her Armani, fresh from winning another Fortune 500 case. The golden child who'd followed the Anderson path perfectly. Someone has to defend people who can't afford 5-figure retainers, I replied, packing my law books. People who can't pay aren't worth defending, Catherine chimed in. That's basic business. Mom appeared, wringing her hands. Darling, please. The judge position at corporate court is practically reserved for an Anderson. In 10 years. I don't want to judge corporate cases, I cut her off. I want to make a real difference. Real difference. Dad laughed. The only difference that matters is in your bank account. You'll come crawling back when you're tired of defending criminals. If they'd bothered to check, they'd have known I'd already submitted my application for the judicial nomination. But the Andersons only tracked corporate appointments. Goodbye, Dad. I headed for the elevator. Good luck with those merger cases. Running away from real law, he called after me. Just remember, Andersons don't defend street criminals. 5 years later, I straightened my judicial robes and checked my reflection. The newly appointed youngest judge in the state's history looked back at me. Your Honor, my clerk Sarah poked her head in. The Anderson and Associates team is here for the corporate fraud case. The one where they're defending the CEO charged with stealing employee pensions? Yes. Your father's leading the defense. I smiled. Let's not keep them waiting. The courtroom fell silent as I entered. In the gallery, Mom's perfectly styled hair seemed to deflate. Catherine's designer briefcase slipped from her fingers. All rise, the bailiff called. The Honorable Judge Emma Anderson presiding. Dad's face went from confident to ashen as I took my seat at the bench. His briefcase hit the floor with a thud. Counsel, I looked down at my former family now standing before my bench. Are you prepared to present your case? Your Honor, Dad stammered. There must be some mistake. This is a major corporate case. And I'm a major court judge, I replied evenly. Though not the corporate court judge you always wanted. Funny how life works out. Catherine was frantically flipping through her notes. But you're a public defender. Was a public defender. Then a prosecutor. Now a judge. I smiled. Amazing what you can achieve when you're not chasing corporate clients. Mom had sunk into a gallery seat, her society friends whispering furiously around her. Now, I continued, you're defending a CEO accused of stealing from his workers' pension fund. The same kind of real law you mocked me for leaving behind. Dad found his voice. Your Honor, given our personal connection. You mean given that you're my father? That my sister's your co-counsel? That this is the family firm? I raised an eyebrow. Are you suggesting I'm not capable of being impartial? That my years of public service have somehow made me less qualified than if I'd stayed handling corporate mergers? The silence in the courtroom was deafening. No, Your Honor, he muttered. Good. Because unlike some lawyers, I believe justice matters more than family connections. I opened the case file. Shall we begin? As Dad stumbled through his opening statement, I caught Catherine texting frantically under the table. Probably updating the family group chat. Guess who's judging our biggest case? The daughter who ran away from real law. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's judging their case from the highest seat in the courtroom. Your Honor, Dad was saying, his usual courtroom confidence shattered. Our client merely made investment decisions that emptied the retirement accounts of 3,000 workers? I interrupted, reviewing the evidence. Fascinating how your definition of merely has evolved since you taught me corporate law. Catherine jumped in, smoothing her Armani suit. Your Honor, if we could discuss this in chambers. Why, counselor? Because we're sisters. I met her gaze. The same sister who said public defenders weren't real lawyers? The gallery buzzed. Mom had stopped pretending to text her country club friends and was staring at her daughters, one in judicial robes, the other floundering before the bench. Approach the bench, I commanded. They came forward, Dad's expensive Italian shoes squeaking on the courtroom floor. The sound reminded me of all those Sunday dinners where he'd lectured about real law, while wearing those same shoes. Let me be clear, I said quietly. Your client stole pensions from people who worked their entire lives. People like Mrs. Rodriguez in the gallery, 30 years as a janitor, now facing eviction because your CEO needed a third yacht. The market fluctuations dash, Dad began. Save the corporate spin. I held up the evidence files. I spent 5 years prosecuting white-collar crime before taking this bench. I know the difference between market fluctuations and fraud. My phone buzzed silently, a text from Mom. Darling, the firm's reputation. I ignored it, focusing on the lawyers before me. Your motion to dismiss is denied. We'll hear testimony from the pension holders first. But Catherine sputtered, these are just hourly workers. Their testimony isn't as crucial as our expert witnesses. Their lives were destroyed, I cut in. That makes their testimony very crucial indeed. Dad's face had moved from shock to calculation. Your Honor. Emma. Perhaps we could discuss this privately. Over dinner at the club. Are you suggesting I compromise my judicial ethics over family dinner? I asked loudly enough for the court reporter to catch every word. Like you compromised your ethics defending corporate theft? The gallery's whispers grew louder. I saw several reporters scribbling frantically. Return to your tables, I ordered. Mrs. Rodriguez, please take the stand. As the elderly janitor walked forward, I caught Catherine whispering to Dad, she's really going to let the help testify first? The help, as you call them, I announced, are American workers who played by the rules. They didn't get legacy admissions to law school or inherited partnerships at Daddy's firm. Mom was now openly crying in the gallery. The society pages would be brutal tomorrow. Mrs. Rodriguez, I began, please tell the court what happened to your pension. As she described losing her retirement to corporate fraud, I watched my family's faces. Dad checking his gold watch, Catherine rolling her eyes, Mom dabbing her tears with a silk handkerchief. They still didn't get it. They thought this was about family drama, about their rebellious daughter-turned-judge. But this was about justice. Real justice. Not the kind that came with country club memberships and corner offices. My clerk handed me another evidence file. Internal emails showing Dad and Catherine knew about the fraud months ago. Counselors, I looked at my family, will resume after lunch. I suggest you review your ethical obligations to this court. And perhaps reconsider your definition of real law. Sometimes the best justice isn't just ruling against your family, it's forcing them to face the truth from the judge's bench. After lunch recess, I studied the internal emails in my chambers. Each one more damning than the last. My family's law firm actively helping their client hide pension theft. Your Honor. My clerk Sarah appeared. Your mother's in the hallway. Says it's a family emergency. The only emergency is her realizing her daughter actually understands justice. I stood straightening my robes. Back to court. In the hallway, Mom grabbed my arm. Emma, please. The club president's wife was in the gallery this morning. Everyone's talking. About what, Mom? That an Anderson is finally upholding the law instead of exploiting it. About how you're destroying our reputation. Your father built this firm by defending corporate criminals. I pulled away. Now excuse me. I have actual justice to serve. Back in court, Catherine was in full performance mode, cross-examining Mrs. Rodriguez. Isn't it true, she smiled condescendingly, that you only had a high school education? How could you possibly understand complex pension management? Objection. The prosecutor rose, badgering the witness. Sustained. I leaned forward. Counselor, education level doesn't determine human worth. Something your sister learned in public defense. Catherine flinched at the word, sister. Dad was frantically scribbling notes, probably planning his appeal based on family bias. Permission to approach? He asked. At the bench he dropped his voice. Emma, be reasonable. These workers, they're not our kind of people. They don't understand business. Like I didn't understand real law? I held up one of his emails. Tell me, Dad, did you understand business when you advised hiding pension transfers in shell companies? His face went white. Where did you get ? I was a prosecutor before this bench, remember? The job you said was beneath an Anderson. I turned to Catherine. And those complex pension management questions? The emails show you helped design the fraud structure. Your Honor, she started. Save it. The SEC has copies of everything. I raised my voice. We'll resume with the prosecution's evidence. As federal agents entered with boxes of documents, Mom fled the gallery. The society pages would have to wait. The front page would be covering the Anderson firm's downfall instead. Your Honor, the prosecutor approached. We have evidence that Anderson and Associates was not just defending fraud, but actively participating. Objection. Dad shouted. This is a vindictive attack by a daughter with a grudge. The courtroom fell silent. Every eye turned to the bench. No, Father, I said clearly. This is justice. Something you taught me about in theory but never practiced. I turned to the prosecutor. Proceed. As evidence mounted through the afternoon, I watched my family's carefully constructed world crumble. The corporate defender, the society wife, the golden daughter, all exposed by the child they'd mocked for choosing public service. My phone buzzed again, a message from the state's Chief Justice. Seeing the Anderson case coverage. Proud to have you on our bench. Real justice matters. Looking down at my father and sister now facing potential disbarment, I realized something. They'd been right about one thing. I had run away from their version of law. I'd run straight toward justice instead. Court is adjourned until tomorrow, I announced. When we return, the prosecution will present evidence of the firm's direct involvement in pension fraud. As everyone rose, Catherine turned to Dad. What do we do? His response carried clearly. Start looking for criminal defense attorneys. But not public defenders. I smiled slightly. They still didn't get it. The best criminal defense attorneys I knew? All started in public defense. Sometimes the greatest justice is watching those who mocked your choices face the consequences of their own. The morning headline said it all. Anderson dynasty faces criminal charges. Judge Anderson presides over family firm's downfall. In my chambers, I reviewed the final evidence while Sarah brought in more coffee. The Bar Association's Ethics Committee is waiting outside. They want a statement about your family. Tell them to wait for my ruling. I touched my judicial robe. The bench speaks louder than any statement. When I entered the courtroom, the changes were stark. Dad and Catherine had traded their designer suits for department store basics, their assets frozen by the... Mom was absent, probably hiding from her society friends. But the gallery was packed with pension holders watching justice unfold. Before we begin, I addressed the court. Defense counsel has been replaced due to criminal investigation. Mr. Anderson and Ms. Anderson will now be represented by court-appointed attorneys. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The corporate lawyers who mocked public defenders were now depending on them. Your Honor, Dad's new attorney stood, given the family relationship dash. My family relationship is with justice, counselor. I gestured to Mrs. Rodriguez and the other victims. These people trusted the law to protect them. That trust matters more than any last name. Catherine whispered something to her public defender who shook her head, probably refusing some ethically questionable strategy. The prosecution may present its closing evidence. As documentation of the firm's fraud filled the screens, I watched my father's face. Each email, each transfer, each carefully hidden transaction exposed the truth about Anderson and Associates' real law. My phone buzzed, a news alert. Anderson firm clients fleeing. Judge's integrity exposes decades of corporate fraud. The evidence shows, the prosecutor concluded, that Anderson and Associates wasn't just defending fraud, they were teaching it. Helping clients hide crimes while mocking those who sought justice. Dad stared at the floor. Catherine's perfect posture had crumbled. Before ruling, I announced, I have a question for the defendants. I held up an old photo me leaving the firm 5 years ago. You said I was running away from real law. What do you think now? Your Honor, Dad's public defender cautioned, my client shouldn't dash. No. Dad stood slowly. Let me answer. We was wrong. You didn't run from law. You ran toward justice. Something I forgot existed beneath all those corporate retainers. Catherine dabbed her eyes. The pension holders. We never even learned their names. Just called them workers in our billing sheets. Mrs. Rodriguez, I turned to the gallery. What was your monthly pension supposed to be? $2,847, she answered clearly. 30 years of cleaning offices including Anderson and Associates. The same amount, I noted, as 1 hour of the firm's corporate billing rate. The gallery murmured. Catherine actually looked at Mrs. Rodriguez for the first time. Based on the evidence, I began my ruling. This court finds. Mom slipped into the back, finally facing what her daughter had become. Not the corporate judge she wanted, but the justice the law required. Anderson and Associates is found liable for pension fraud. All assets will be frozen, all profits disgorged to restore worker pensions. And the firm's principals, I met my family's eyes, are referred for criminal prosecution. As the gallery erupted, I saw Catherine reach for Mrs. Rodriguez's hand. Dad remained standing, facing his daughter's justice. Court adjourned. I struck the gavel. Dad, this is what real law looks like. Sometimes the truest justice comes from the daughter they thought was running away, when she was actually running toward something greater than they could imagine. Later that evening, alone in my chambers, I found another email from years ago. Dad writing to Catherine, "Let your sister play public defender. Real lawyers know where the money is." A knock at my door. Sarah again. "Judge Anderson? The State Supreme Court Chief Justice is here." Chief Justice Martinez entered, her own judicial robe catching the evening light. That couldn't have been easy. Easier than watching pension holders lose their homes, I replied, gesturing to a chair. You know, she sat down, I started in public defense too. Back when they called us social workers with law degrees. My family preferred legal charity workers. I smiled slightly. At least until today. About today. She placed a folder on my desk. The Judicial Ethics Committee reviewed everything. They're impressed. Not many judges would handle their own family's case with such precision. Justice doesn't care about family trees. No, she agreed, but integrity does. Which is why I'm here. She opened the folder. We're creating a new Judicial Oversight Committee. Focusing on corporate fraud, pension theft, worker protection. We need someone who understands both sides of the law. I raised an eyebrow. Both sides. Someone who's seen corporate law from the inside, but chose to serve justice instead. She smiled. Someone who wasn't afraid to judge their own family firm. My phone buzzed again, a message from Catherine, that pension holder Mrs. Rodriguez. I'm meeting with her tomorrow. Maybe I can help fix what we broke. Interesting timing, I told the Chief Justice. My sister might be learning about real law too. The Anderson name doesn't have to mean corporate fraud, she noted. It could mean something else now. Through my window I could see the courthouse steps where I'd started my public defense career. Where Dad had predicted I'd come crawling back to real law.